so I'll start the meeting. Could I call for nomination? Subcommittee, please. Councillor Lever.
Councillor Collins. I'll have to send that.
Other nominations? Councillor Collins, would you like to take the chair, please?
Thank you. Just for clarification, members, this meeting is being recorded. So we'll go right to the Sederunt apologies. Claire, thanks.
No apologies. Chairman, so the members present.
Thank you. Any declarations of interest, members? No declarations of interest. Thank you. Can we go down to agenda item 4 on the agenda, Windfarm Community Benefits Policy, Regional Socio-Economic Fund. Before kicking off here, I would just indicate to members that although there are 3 options as stated at 2.1 that are contained within the papers, I don't consider that members are limited or restricted to those 3 options. A hybrid of those 3 or any wider considerations, I would suggest, is perfectly in order in taking the business forward. Mr. Burns, can I ask, do you have anything I would like to add to the paper? Nothing as yet, Chairman. Okay, thank you. Sorry?
We're not here to debate the policy.
Okay, I'm just reminded that we're not here to debate the policy. That has already been determined, as members are no doubt are aware. So if members have any questions? Councillor Castle? I'd just like to say that one of the points that was repeatedly stressed at the last subcommittee was the fact that we wanted to ensure there was an emphasis on rural projects. Now this seems to have been replaced with a word local, which I think is slightly different. I don't know whether the rest of the members agree, but certainly it was my opinion that it was rural projects, rural heating schemes, rural broadband, and so on that the emphasis was to be on. Thank you. Councillor McLeod.
Would totally agree with Councillor Carson. I think it was agreed on the table that the criteria, the purpose and criteria was all to be emphasised towards rural and not local. It was rural specifically that was mentioned.
I would just refer members to 5.3 on page 3, that the fund criteria.
Sorry, Chair, can I just go there? That's actually the minutes of the last meeting where at 5.3 the minutes aren't on the agenda for this meeting today. We agreed at the Affairs Committee. But 5.3 on the minutes did emphasise the support for rural projects and that the local be included in the following bullet points, and there's a list of bullet points, so perhaps that's not been emphasised and replicated in the report, so apologies for that. But it was noted as such.
Councillor McLeod.
Yeah, can I just say clarification then that when we get the next report back, the bullet points will say rural and not local.
Then, sorry, we'll carry from this meeting in that context. Councillor Dumfries.
So this at the same time in that debate, and it wasn't recorded, so it doesn't matter how it was documented by Claire, but we also talked about a limiting factor in favour of what we described as host communities when applications were coming to the socio-economic fund for match funding, etc. And that may be something that's dealt with later on in the process when we set out the actual qualifying criteria, and I appreciate that that's still to be done, that's not necessarily contained within the document today, but it's something we take on board, because that too is very much, would normally be a rural element, because normally these wind farms are built in rural environments and in rural communities, so it may well be a given. I'd just like to see it recorded somewhere at some stage.
Thank you. I think all members would agree with that. Councillor Carruthers?
Thanks, Chair. Just considering the geographics of Dumfries and Galloway, and just we're talking rural and local, what is the difference really between, I suppose in Dumfries, Sederunt and Annan are obviously larger towns, the three largest towns in Dumfries and Galloway, but how does it exclude the urban region? Is this what we want to do, exclude urban, or we just want to primarily focus the actual monies on rural location? If it is rural location, could I have some form of definition on what that is, please?
I don't think it does exclude the urban areas. I think what members are seeking is the assurance that rural areas will be considered as a priority and the monies or funds that might come forward from any of these agreements. There is an instance that a wind farm could encroach into that 15 kilometre radius insofar as Dumfries is concerned. So I don't think that changes Dumfries from rural to urban. Dumfries will remain urban, but the socio-economic fund and the way that it's determined will be a criteria that this committee will agree in due course as part of its wider considerations. So it's really for this committee to make recommendations in terms of the classifications or prioritisations that it chooses to make to PH&E.
I'm sure everyone lost sight of the fact that this is a region-wide socio-economic fund. What I think members are trying to do is more to protect, if you like, the interests of local communities and ensure they're not lost in the grand scheme of things, because we're quite easy, and I don't want to be unkind at this early stage, to bring forward a whole host of huge projects for large settlements that would find favour, and that don't want that to happen at the cost or exclusion of small communities. There has to be a balance, and the balance would be that the recognition that rural is very much part of the process that we're engaging in.
Thank you. Chris, Dan, is there any comment you would like to make at this point in time?
Thank you, Chair. I think what we would wish to say is that following the decision from the committee today, then, as Councillor Dempster said, we will bring forward a further paper which will fully detail exactly what the criteria are for consideration of a further committee.
Thank you. Can we go now to look at the three options as laid out in the papers and give considerations further on the basis of what's before members and take the debate forward on that principle? Councillor McLean.
Just if you bear with me just for a minute regarding the options. When it comes to recommendations, I do not like 2.2. I don't think it's appropriate for this committee to determine what option is fully developed for further development. As far as I'm concerned, any decisions that we make on options or a combination of options, all options should be fully developed. We then would make an opinion as to what one we think should be best, but all options and all information on every one of the options should be going to PHES Falconry, because it is they at the minute that will make that decision, and I don't think PHES Falconry can make a proper decision if all information on all options is not available to them.
I think really in terms of the options at the present time, as I said at the outset, if we look at those that are before us and develop from those our preferred way forward, but if there are aspects contained within those options that this committee does not want to pursue, then there's little point in officers expending time and energy on that. So further to that, it's the expectation, I would suggest, of this committee to put forward any ideas that aren't being expressed here that they would wish to see officers further explore and report back on. Councillor Dempster.
I don't really get how to speak to you, but also, since you invited me to speak, but I'm looking to I come from the area committee proposal simply because each area committee works independent of the other. I would imagine, I would hope that whatever the socio-economic fund, whatever shape and form it takes, that people across the region will be able to look at it and see the very same criteria and opportunities present themselves region-wide rather than area by area.
Thank you. Councillor Carrara.
I was going to say pretty much the same when it comes to area committees. I think we should roll it out as an option. My preference would either be option 1 or option 2 or a hybrid of both, but one of the two.
Thank you. Councillor Prentice.
Just following on from what you said, Chairman, about and from what Jim said about 2.2 recommendations, I think this could be a hybrid of all three options probably. So I mean 2.2 and the recommendations is actually relevant. I would put that forward. As far as the area committees are concerned, I mean I'm quite happy to listen to everybody's opinion about this, but I think the area committees certainly have a role to play in this, whether it's as it is set out here, or whether it's a hybrid from 1, 2 and 3, that's for us to determine. But I definitely have the belief that area committees should have some say in it.
Councillor Raven.
I've got no problem with the area committees having a say. I'm not keen on the idea that we actually distribute a funding on the area committee basis because the boundaries are so hard. You might have proposals that come in and spread across the area committee. So I think I'd discount option 3 as it stands. Option 1 I think is very bland as it stands. I don't think either North Harbour Authority is a very good example to quote because as long as I've been on the council, we're on the verge of setting up this new authority. And I think it may actually be on the verge of meeting for the first time. So I think that there's real problems with organisations such as that. I think also what we need to do is to flesh out how those community representatives are going to be selected. Is it going to be by ballot? I don't know how many community councils we've got in other community organisations. It's narrowed down to 4 candidates, and I think we need to get more information on this, and the same is true of the other possible representatives on this external body. We need to think more about how we actually want to appoint this, because it may well be competitive. If you've got 4 community representatives representing a region, or maybe assisting a region as big as Dumfries and Galloway, that's something else which we need to consider. We actually want this body to function, not just actually be there, but of course to do the job at the end of the day. So I'd like to see more information on that. The council subcommittee on ours has been set up by the council. I think we do need to point out ownership, or maintain ownership of any decisions which come out of this. So once again, it's looking at some sort of hybrid body. And then we're trying to the community representation. Once again, I think we need to have far more detail about the scoring panel, and who's going to be on the scoring panel, and what authority it's going to have, etc. So I do think there's quite a bit more work which needs to be done.
Thank you. Any comment from officers at this point? No. Thank you. Councillor Carson.
Thanks, John. I certainly would like to see option 3 rolled out. I think there needs to be some sort of accountability at member level, and I don't think that would happen through option 1, potentially through option 2. The issues with potentially the hard borders between the different areas, that's sometimes overcome and has been in the past with examples like mobility or whatever, where organisations based in one area can actually make application to other area committees for funding because there's a benefit derived from a project that's in a particular area. And so I don't actually see why that should be a stop to why area committees can distribute it. So if there's a project, for example, in Streeton that had a benefit in Richardshire and in Fisher, the no reason why the applicant couldn't actually apply for funding through all the area committees for the
the economic fund. My issue is with option one is probably needs to be spelled out as the community involvement. I suppose that's across all three options. We have to make sure that the community involvement is the right community involvement. We've got some communities that are very proactive and are doing a great job of managing the funds that they've already negotiated on behalf of the Windfarm companies. So we need to look at how potentially we can harness the expertise of some of these communities and make sure we don't actually get communities that don't have very much experience. So how the process of actually appointing community representatives, how would that take place and what safeguards would there be that we're actually going to the right people? Because when we're a community representative for the stewardship or for the list of could potentially get the wrong people. Thank you. Comment? Councillor Bowser?
Thanks. I think there's a duty and it's not to complicate matters, especially for members of the public and especially for applicants. And the area committee arrangement may be a complicated exercise, and we might find ourselves going to the committee, going to a school panel, then going to another subcommittee, depending on the eventually vote on this matter before all the funds are released. And to my mind, that is too draconian, if you like. We might find ourselves in a situation, and I'm not making this proposal until everybody has an opportunity to speak, but in a situation where we choose option 1 with 8 members, 4 members of the public, an independent chairperson, and that scrutiny by 8 members as part of this team that sets up option 1. We might want option 1 to lead up solely representative and professional people that then sit with the scoring panel to determine which is the most worthy applications, and it goes to a subcommittee of the council to agree or change the recommendation before the money is released. So I don't think it's going to be employed. I just think for clarity, for the public that see us as when someone's talked about the economic plan, we can't get it to turn around, and we don't want the council to be in that position. We want this to be a flexible, simple arrangement, and I know there's a lot of money potentially involved here, but there's also no hurry, because as far as I can gather, there's no money in the fund, there's no money imminently due to come to the fund, so there is no hurry. We can do this and do this right over a period of time. We can again give officers further direction and say, bring another report back with far more detailed information that let us enter into more I was going to say it, but that's maybe the wrong one. But we're into the debate into the cross the T's and dot the I's before we present this back to PHES. But I would want it to be a relatively simple exercise and something the public can easily understand and grasp, but it goes to an external body and straight to the council. It goes to a hybrid external body scoring panel subcommittee. Whatever it might be, but I think the committees is just too complex, and the option that was offered about going to Wigton and Stewardship, if it's a region-wide body, it just goes straight there. It doesn't matter what area it comes from, and it would be considered by people, I would imagine, from across the region, and certainly members from across the region. But my area would be, I think members still need ownership, because we have created this beast, for want of a better word. We have set the criteria, we have said what we will do, and therefore I, in my view, need ownership and say that when the outcome is there, we're accountable to the public, but certainly working with the public, and I've never any difficulty about engaging the public and making sure their views are heard and representations made, but I think that we need ownership ultimately at the end of the day.
Thank you. Can I assume that there is a consensus around a single body, and that we would ask officers to bring back a report giving us examples of how that single body representing the interests of the region-wide socio-economic fund and how it be managed? Is that something that members would be agreeable for the officers to bring back? No answer. was the reply. Councillor Carruthers and Councillor McLaren.
Just a minute, my raised will come back in due course, but on that particular point, I believe it should be one particular body. Councillor Dempsey just referred to maybe potentially a body that then could possibly refer back to the council. I don't think that's the right position to take. I think we should be a single body, and I'll give my view when I get that chance, but happy for everybody else to get their point across.
Councillor McLaren.
Yeah, I was listening to the comments that were made about area committee, etc., etc. How about floating this one, if you want area committee involvement, why don't you actually top slice a percentage of the fund and give it to area committees? That's the way Highland Council do it, that's their policy. As regarding the option 2 and 3 that are in the paper, the community involvement in those ones does not give them any voting rights on the decisions of where the funds go. I'm not particularly comfortable with that one. Option 1, as has been said, how would the community representatives be selected? I would need a lot more information on that one. As regarding the numbers of elected members or community representatives, I will need to be convinced what's the best way of doing that one. I heard that we need to take ownership of this fund. I have difficulties with having ownership of a fund whose money has come from communities. I've said it more than once. In fact, it's now got to stage that certain officers jump in reformally when the mention of the council fund is mentioned because it's not council money. Also, what we're voting on here is whatever recommendations we bring forward, the Scottish Government sometime this autumn or early winter, the beginning of the year, will be issuing guidance on good practice on community benefit. And this isn't been mentioned in the papers. And I don't think we should be making any final decisions until we at least have information, including the full paper on what that guidance is going to be. It would be looking rather silly of us to make any sort of recommendation without knowing what the Scottish Government is saying is going to be good practice. We could make a decision that would end up not being good practice.
Thank you. I would, definitely prepared to be corrected, but I would say that taking ownership, the term taking ownership when used in this context is really about recognising the responsibility of the council in assisting and enabling the benefit to be accrued to be the best it can be managed from the fund on behalf of the communities and in collaboration and partnership working with communities. So I would go back to Councillor Dempster, who I believe used the phrase that we're making reference to here. Councillor Dempster?
So I've summarised my position probably very well. We don't actually own the money, we simply we're a vehicle to send it in an appropriate direction, and that direction would be by members of the public giving us that direction. I think if there is a paper coming forward that gives best practice advice, I would have to agree that that is something we should wait for if there is a kind of definitive date on when that's likely to be. And I think as well, although sometimes we can curse sometimes with different language, but I would not go down the way top slicing it to get to area committees. I don't think that's right. I think, again, the public need to know there's a fixed amount of money, that there are projects that to be applied for, or schemes to be brought forward, and somebody would determine the merits of these applications, and that's how I would see the fund being dispersed. And again, it's simplification, that's just a complication that I think we could do without. I think though, we should probably at this stage say to officers, there are two options that you need to bring forward with additional information. If we look at option 1, obviously I think Jim seems to, and I can't speak for him, but he seems to think that the majority of the members may be members of the public. I would think the majority of members should be members of the council, but that was options that officers could draw. voted in by members of the public, either via a scoring panel that they sit on prior to that a subcommittee sitting in consideration. And I only say that because I don't ever like it at an early stage to settle on one option. There are a number of options that should have been followed in light. That's been used a couple of times, the terminology hybrid. We could find something from both of these options put together into a single scheme that members would find acceptable. And I think that would be the appropriate way forward. And then we could, when we get the guidance that's coming from the Scottish Government, we could sit down in the detail about what criteria, what weighting we want to give, whether we want to give a greater weighting to the creation of social housing or community travel, whatever it might be. That I think would be for another day. I think what we should do now is maybe get two options and get staff to bring forward detailed proposals of how these different bodies might work in a variety of make-ups, what 8 members, 4 members, 6 members of the community, where they might come from, so we've got a better picture of what this new body or subcommittee might actually look like, and we could certainly determine that, even if that came before the guidance that Jim says is coming from the Scottish Government, because I'm very much in favour of we can say if there's a paper coming forward that gives good guidance, good practice from the Scottish Government, we should recognise that, because we'll be challenged if we don't follow that particular guidance anyway.
Thank you. Councillor McLeod?
Yeah, I'm happy with the definition that we're giving ownership here. The unfortunate thing is, when it gets out into the big bad world, ownership could be misconstrued by members of the public, but more importantly, it could also be misconstrued by officers and elected members what the definition of ownership of the fund would be. As regarding a comment about the top slice in the committee, I didn't say I supported it. I only floated the idea for other members who said that the area committees should possibly have a locus in some sort of decision. I didn't say I supported it, and regarding the auctioneering, the ratio of members, elected members to members of the public, I'm not precious in that one. I would just wait to see. I don't think there should be more elected members to members of the public or members of the public to elected members. I'm quite happy for that one to be developed and make a decision once I've got a lot more information on that one.
Thank you. Councillor Carson?
Just to come back on Councillor Downstairs' comments about over-complication and transparency. At the moment, with the area funding, we have a process which is very transparent. The general public are being aware of it and are comfortable with it, and have been over many years, where there's a clear application process, where there's a group which looks at the applications prior to moving on to the area committee, and that's already in place. I don't see how adding another pot of money would overcomplicate it. I think everything's in place, and there is transparency and accountability through the area committees. And also in the stewardship, when applications come forward, the individual members have a big role to play in making sure the aspirations of the community are taken forward. And we're very diverse, even though we are very much a rural area, we have very diverse requirements. And I'm really concerned that if we were to move to a body which maybe only had 2 members from the Stewart area, their priorities might be completely different. And the areas that have most round farms might actually not get their opinions represented properly. Again, I feel that wouldn't be the case if it was done in a area committee. So I would certainly want to see further work done on option theory not to be taken off the table.
Thank you. Councillor Prentice?
Just agree with what Phil said in the past couple of minutes. I think the advantage of the saying from Chair at the beginning of, about having a single body. I can understand that, but I do believe that the area committee should have some involvement in this process, because the more we bring this, I feel that the more we bring it into the centre, put it that way, the more disgruntled the communities get. Whereas benefits from Windfarms, whereas anything, bring it back to the centre, and this would appear to the way of going around. It would appear that we're thinking of sort of administering it from the centre here. That's where the people in the communities get disgruntled to say, here we go again, we're bloody saying this and what's going on here. And I would agree entirely with what Penny has just said.
Thank you. Councillor Carros?
Thanks. I think our council, my point of view is they should appoint 2 members. If there's, say, 8 members across the council, and that would be their role. I think we've already got funding, applications can be made to area committees. We're all privy to that, we're all part of that, and I don't think that ties up and reflects what we want to try and achieve as part of this remit that PH&E's got to try and set up this, I would agree with yourself, a single body that should be looking at this across Dumfries and Galloway. Option 2 is the council subcommittee. I'd favour that more than anything, it wasn't for the fact that it's already been pointed out that we can't get the voting rights of external bodies on this. Otherwise, I think that would be the preferred option for me. It puts something solid into place where the council hasn't got so much control of, but it's there, it could administer it, and it could make sure it was kept on track quite clearly. But option 1 reflects, I think, very much what's been used in the past in Dumfries and Galloway. We've got local action groups, we've got one which is leader, doesn't reflect that so much, but we've got the Fisheries Local Action Group. This reflects that as far as there's 2 members at present, and that could be extended something similar to that, but with the 8 members on. I'd be more inclined to see something like that being involved. So you can't get outside bodies, it's completely apart from the council. And I keep reflecting back to this point that's been made on numerous occasions. This is not the council's money. This is benefit to the communities in Dumfries and Galloway. But I was at a Harbour Trust meeting last night, the first time it's met since 1995. It was really initiated. That was actually something that had been neglected by the council. They should have picked up on it. Well, we were aware of that last night. They're duty bound. Now, if something like this with the council is involved and it's got it would administer it, not being controlled, but it would certainly be there as the main point of contact, then it would be getting looked after properly. The resources are there to take care of something like this. And that's what I think is fundamental to this, that it's administered and adhered in the correct manner. There is one other question, I suppose, for Chris and Dan in regards to the Windfarm developers. What do they have over this, if any? Is there any legalities for them? If they felt totally opposed to something that we put forward, what impact would that possibly have?
I think in terms of developers, they are very much aware of the fact that we have a policy for community Windfarm benefits. They're not always completely comfortable with it, but they recognise that there is a policy, and their main consideration is that the communities, particularly the host communities, the 50% that they are currently entitled to as part of the council's policy is dealt with effectively by the communities. Their overriding concern and influence, if you like, is that it is seen to be benefits that come back to the communities, whether that's across the whole of Dumfries and Galloway or, as was mentioned before, if we come back with a further report, detailed report, is that is some weighting given to potential host communities. I think as all elected members have said, is that the clear guidance as well, clear view from them is about communities as opposed to the council being seen as the recipient of the fund.
Thank you. Councillor Baxter?
Thanks, Chair. I think just to address George's point, it is a region-wide socio-economic fund, therefore it will be delivered from the centre. It may be of benefit to more communities, some more than others, should I say, but it has to come from the centre. It's just how we manage that. And I think about the area committee, I can have an example like the Village Hall's improvement scheme. That was simply absorbed into the area committee's funds and used for other purposes because it then became part of an overall fund. to be able to check the internet or check whatever at any time, see what funds are available, how much is left, and the mechanism for access. And the point that some of it ain't reviewing, but some members have about 2 members each area connected being part of a team or a scoring panel. I'm not comfortable with that, because that would then give members view from right across the region, but it would have to be a single mechanism so there was no confusion. That's the take I would have on it. But I still think ultimately we should have 2 options brought back to members, and we can mix and match, or we can simply run with one. And each option should have a variety of proposals in terms of option 1, whether they're 8 members, 4 members, 12 members, how many members of the council will need to go up from, who the chairperson will be, whether they want the third sector involved, because they will have a valuable contribution to make, but they're best sitting aside advising the communities rather than sitting on a school panel. So options that should be brought to us at some stage in the future, I would say.
Thank you. Councillor Rover.
I think what I want to be clear of is this is a law which is going to come to the communities this is a law to the Windfarm developers. So this is actually a law which is being paid for by everybody within Dumfries and Galloway, everybody in Scotland, everybody in the UK. And I was very clear yesterday from one of those that was given to the select committee from the heads of the generation companies. We are paying for this at the end of the day, so we all need to benefit from it. And we're looking north from the centre of Dumfries. The entire region is covered by Hairstays, Windfarm and Swinton, so it does affect everyone. So I do think we're going to have a single region development fund. I do have concerns in terms of the community representatives, as far as we do a lot of community councils, but we do have a significant number disestablished. For example, Local Briggs, which comes from around about 2,000 people, it does not have a community council. It will benefit from the Hairstays, Windfarm, it does benefit from Swinton. So we need to have a mechanism whereby people in these communities as well can be involved in it. So that's why I want to see further information about our community representatives within it. It was pointed out that some community councils possibly represent a couple of hundred people. But they are active community councils, so we need to get a balance into this in terms of how each of these communities can actually benefit and contribute towards whatever system we come up with, whether it's a hybrid or not.
Thank you. I've got 2 more members who are looking to speak, and I'd like them to go to Claire and get a summary of the discussion that's taken place thus far, and for members then to have a look at recommendations coming out of the rationale of those discussions. Maybe ask officers after Claire's given us a summary for any contribution that they would like to make at this stage. So, Councillor McLaren.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I don't disagree with a lot of what Councillor Moore and Councillor Dempster saying as regarding option 1 and option 2 regarding how we deal with the community representatives, and as I said before, the ratio to community representatives on option 1 to who are elected members. However, I would also propose that along with option 1 and option 2 being fully developed, we have a 1A and a 2A, which looks at how we deal with my original thought on taking a percentage, and we could pick a percentage out of the air, but I wouldn't recommend it would be that big. The percentage would go to the area committees and it is ring-fenced. Now, I hear what Councillor Dempster said about the home improvements being absorbed in the Windfarm district. That is not the case in Wigton area. It still is a separate thing that comes forward as a home improvement. I don't see why, if we want area committee involvement, that we kind of ring-fence that money and set up a scoring panel, etc., similar to the one that we've got for the area committee money, but the money is ring-fenced for what is in the criteria that we set out that community benefit money is to be used for. So I would go for option 1, 2, and 2.
What complicated it, why don't you?
community representatives, I would like to think we could get more detail on how these reps would actually be chosen if there's a further paper coming forward. I mean, I'm presuming they're not just 4 reps from community councils. I'm presuming this would be an open thing for anybody to apply for. I would just like more detail on how the community representatives are going to be chosen.
I think also that whether a community representatives playing a role such as this, or such as being considered by members, that a 5% or whatever take from that monies could be used to subsidise at least travelling expenses for members of the wider community who do attend these meetings and contribute in these circumstances. Now, I did say that I had 2 more speakers. I've had those 2 more speakers, but I've got 2 more members looking to speak now. On this one occasion, and then again, Councillor Carson and Councillor Dempster, then over to the clerk. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. As I said, I was in favour of option 3 because I want to ensure that the local communities and customers of Glencairns get their fair share. I am interested in Councillor Clan's suggestion that there would still be an element that the committees could distribute. The sort of scenario I don't want to see is a small community, for example, looking for money for a centralised heating system or a community heating system and applying for X amount of money, and a project in Heathrow applying for the same thing and back down to value for money and the number of people affected or whatever. I think there's an argument that some of this community benefit is supposed to help, but there's not really an economic argument for it to take place. There's no values and the economic argument's far better for it to happen in an urban area, and I don't want to see that happening. And this Windfarm benefit was one of the ways that actually communities that there wasn't an economic argument for could still improve and move on, whether that be with broadband or whether that be with green or reducing costs or whatever, and I feel by centralising we might lose that. So I'd certainly like to see the emphasis again put on rural, but I would certainly be interested in the option that James put forward to some of that money being taken off, that area committees could actually look at distributing to smaller projects.
Thank you. Councillor Dempster.
Thanks, Chair. I think the rating factor that we discussed earlier would address families' concerns, provided that they can rate the factor, and we've also talked earlier about the rural element of it, and that will be featured, I'm sure, in the report that comes back. There's also the proposal of no discounting it, disregarding it because we won't go to that stage of detail, but in the report here it talks about officers having discretion to spend up to 1k without going to school planning, and small communities could probably access that arrangement if that arrangement were agreed back by members, so there's that opportunity as well. But the point I wanted to make, and I'm glad you conceded to allow me to speak once more, Chair, is simply that we need to recognise the contribution that community councils make. There are about 96 or 100 in this region who get their time voluntarily, and we need to be heard. So whilst I have no difficulty at all with members of the public from wherever being recruited to this panel, I would certainly be keen to make sure that community councils were represented, because they do put themselves up for election. They do represent the communities, albeit within a confined area, but they have a serious commitment to the communities that they represent, and I think it's only fair that they are represented in whatever body, whatever kind of creature we eventually develop for the socio-economic fund.
Thank you. Can I turn to the dreaded moment for the clerk to give us a summary of the discussion thus far? Thank you.
This is fair. I wish I had right. I think it's fair to say, Chairman, that the options have been fairly debated. I think it started initially with discounting option 3, but I think it came back onto the table. If I can just run through my notes quickly, I think you're keen to get information back, perhaps on all the options, with far more detail, especially about the aspect of community representation. How will this work? Who will it be? How will it be appointed? I think, harnessing the expertise of communities is perhaps we have to ensure that we get the right people in the right roles here. We don't want a complicated mechanism further, so we need clarity for the public about how the process will work. It needs to be flexible, simple arrangements. There's also the question about ownership and the definition of ownership, that could be misleading. And Chairman, you did say that this is just recognising the responsibility of the Council to ensure that the fund is best managed for communities, whilst recognising this is the community's fund and not the Council's fund. There was sort of talk around having a single body, but as I said, I think you're all keen to have all 3 options back on the table in the next meeting. Councillor McClellan put forward a further suggestion that we take options 1 and 2 further and talk about top slicing some of the fund towards area committees.
Can I just really re-qualify that? I'm quite happy options 1, 2 and 3, but we wouldn't have many if option 3 was chosen, because that's area committee, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's option 1, full work-up on option 1, full work-up on option 2 and 3, and a wee A on the top slice of a percentage for option 1 and 2, because option 3 is the area committee money anyway.
I think just, as I said earlier, Councillor McClellan, it's just a case of all the options are on the table at this moment until you come to the recommendations, but you have put forward this alternative options 1A and 2A. So I think it's really up to members, Chairman, to go to the recommendations. Do they want to take all 3 forward? Do they just want 1 and 2? Do we want to go forward with 1 and 2 with the amendments of 1A and 2A? Over to you.
Thank you. Can I tell the officers at this point for any comment that you would like to make on the debate so far?
I think the only thing I'd like to add, Chair, is that we have been involved with the development of the Scottish Government's best practice, so we haven't got a definitive date for when that's going to be published, but we have been involved with the process of that, just so that members are aware that the Council has been involved in that process.
Thank you. Do you have an idea of when that report might be forthcoming, or might be available, around what time frame?
We don't have a definitive. I suspect it will probably be early in the new year, but we can chase that this afternoon and try and find out if there is any move forward on that and circulate that round.
It looks like you.
The working party just asked for representatives from a number of local authorities who are developing or had policies in place, and they've taken sort of views and feedbacks from those local authorities that have been involved, and it's now just being developed from that.
Thank you. Councillor Prentice. Maybe he doesn't know it, but where we are with certain Windfarm applications at the moment, because they're coming in, they're going to be decided upon at some stage or another, and here we are, we're saying again, let's have more reports and more reports. We can't go on a meeting like this, as one man said to Ireland, we can't go on a meeting like this. I think at some stage or another we're going to have to make a sound and solid decision on what we're going to do here, but it's what we've basically decided to do is to say to, I'm presuming that's the way we're going to, maybe talking out of turn, but we're going to be sending officers away again to further develop 3 options plus another option.
The Council currently at the present time, I will ask Mr Speedy to come in, but the Council currently at the present time has a policy, and therefore under the
matter of that policy, any monies that may be forthcoming would be held in a central pot. What we're talking about here, however, is how that monies would be managed following on the back of that. Now, we're not going to have clarity around that before that guidance, best guidance or best practice guidance is published in January time. But I think it's essential that as elected members we ensure as best we can that the mechanisms are in place to best manage those monies, as I said earlier. But that's really where we're at. This doesn't asking for a further report to enable members to come to a final decision or recommendation for PH&E doesn't delay the moving forward of any benefit monies being held by the council. It's how it's then dispersed and managed following that. Councillor Prentice?
I understand that, Chairman. I'm just trying to make the point that it would appear to me that we haven't made a huge progress as members over the past 6 months on this. And we're going away again. I don't know when the report will come back, whether that's going to be before Christmas or after Christmas or when, but we could finish up in another 2 or 3 months' time at exactly the same spot as we were 6 months ago.
Well, I think you're really giving cause, and I don't disagree with you at all. I think you're really giving cause for members to drill down as well as they possibly can today to getting that relevant information and answers to those questions. And it's the clarity of the question that officers are given today that will enable that to happen. So that's why I haven't tried to rush or hurry things through. But I did say I would go to Mr. Speedy. We've got 2 members wishing to speak. I'll ask Mr. Speedy first of all, and then go to Councillors Dempster and Colours.
Thank you, Chair. I can't comment on any individual applications, the detail of that, but there's no doubt that the Council has put a policy in place and the Planning Authority has to take cognizance of that policy. It's now live. So if there are applications that are currently being assessed and being looked at, or applications in the future, then that policy will prevail. How members actually implement the fund and how they disperse that fund is the detail we're really needing to get to the bottom of. And I think if members are actually putting out the message that they're happy to take and take time to look at everybody's view, and I think that's very important. And I think that's what you're saying. You've been very clear about that this morning. And you're waiting for the best practice, then that might send comfort out to the wider community and the developers themselves. But yes, we'll have to implement the policy as it stands. It's the dispersion of the monies and the mechanism of that we'll have to come to a final decision on.
Sure, George, I agree entirely with what Alice was saying. The point I was trying to make is that we as a subcommittee, is this the second or third go we've had at this? We're going to have another go. The point I was trying to make was we could come back in the month of April and be really not very much further forward than what we were last April. I would like to think that was going to happen.
No, hence the reason I was saying that's why members need to have the clarity around the questions that they ask of officers today to bring back in terms of a further report, so that we can draw a close on this with the best possible outcome. Councillor Dempster?
Thanks, Chair. I envisage this by one or 2 meetings and a 2-stage process. I imagine that next time we will, without doubt, be able to decide which body we have created or should create. And I think we should focus on that. And in the final meeting, we should decide on the criteria based on the guidance that will no doubt be available by that time and members have considered. Because if you look at 323, there are elements there that the government don't like you saying you cannot use this for developing affordable housing. There's no point necessarily missing here if that's no part of what they see as appropriate use of community benefit. So it's important we use the guidance, because we should only draw up this document once, at least it should go in the officers of score and panels as a completed piece of work by this committee, and hopefully supported by the Players and Environment Services Committee as our parent body. But I would say it's a two-stage process. Next meeting we should only sort out the budget, and that should be all the matter. And then the following one, we should sort out the qualifying criteria, what we expect to be developed, and the weighting factor. I'm sure it'll be a long, arduous meeting, but it'll be worthwhile, because at the end of the day, we'll take account of all views and come to a consensus, I would hope. But that's how I see it going forward, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Carlos.
Thanks, Chair. I think on 3.23, I really liked it. I went through it, it's a small paragraph, but I read it as many times and put different scenarios to it in my mind where it would meet, and I think, as previously discussed, it makes use of everything. When it comes back to the actual how we move forward, I mean, I think, as Claire's outlined, the two options plus the A's, you could say, involving the committee, some involvement as Councillor McClellan put forward, I would agree with that entirely, as the way forward. I suppose I would support that. When it comes to the timelines, when should the next actual committee be? I mean, it doesn't really want to be before February or March, but as a further option, should we have an option that reflects, if one of the two options or three options but doesn't reflect it, should we also have an option that reflects best practice guidance, as we should have by that point, at that point in time? So, as a further option, if best practice and guidance is different from what's already been put forward here, then we should have a report that reflects that as well.
I would suggest that anything that officers are likely to bring back in February or at a later date would be informed by that best practice paper. So there wouldn't be a necessity for an additional option, because that best practice guidance would be incorporated into any options that were brought forward at that time.
Just to come back, because as long as that's incorporated, because if we've not got that as it stands, I take it they haven't been, we can't say that best practice guidance is within what's in front of us here, but I'd imagine, like say, that time would be a given.
We don't have it, so until we do, we can't incorporate it. Yeah. Okay, members, do we have a consensus around the information that we would ask officers to bring back to a further meeting of this subcommittee? Councillor Weaver?
The issue of the scoring panel, I think we need more information on what the potential make-up point here. Whether the scoring panel could be in what we find in the process.
Can I ask you, Chris, are you comfortable in the expectation that members are expressing here this morning?
Yes, Chair, we're comfortable with them.
Thank you. Councillor Carson, just to clarify, that's to work up the three options plus the additional suggestion from Councillor McClellan. Is that correct? There has been no dissent from that suggestion thus far. Councillor Dunfries?
Not necessarily dissent, but doubt, shall we say, and provided it's not embraced within the report that we can mix and match, that it may be after consideration members, the majority of them decide that the only committee top slicing isn't an option. We need to have the opportunity to remove that element, if you like. I'm happy to have it considered, I'm happy to have percentages worked up and presented as what that amount might be, but I'm not prepared to say that will be option one, that will be option two. That will be one of the many options that we can mix and match on the day. I think that's what I would be saying here. We're not asking for an agreement, we're saying to include it so that members can consider it, and it may or may not be discounted depending on the view that's taken at that time.
I think where we're at this morning is very much about the members giving an opinion as to where they would like to develop further considerations and where they require therefore the information to support the development of those further considerations, and that's where we're at.
I've just said at the outset I didn't particularly like that idea because it's another structure, but that's something that's for debate and consideration at an appropriate juncture, and it's not today.
Thank you, Councillor McClellan. Councillor Leinster, having finished
else to add?
Thank you, Councillor Carnell.
Just to support Councillor Dempsey in his statements, I mean, I agree we should focus our energies primarily on option 1 and 2, but obviously the area committee, because of the remarks that have been made, the area committee shouldn't be, why should he focus as much energy and time onto option 3 when I think the generalities of the feeling within the committee is that, or the largest part of the committee is that option 1 and 2 are the more favourable.
Okay, thank you, members. Are you comfortable with where we're at?
Can I just carry on? I take it we've discounted, or we are discounting the common good. One was mentioned in the report says that there's no confusion at all.
I think it says that the officers have already discounted it in 3.4, so it's fine. I'm happy to agree with Councillor McLeod that we should not as a committee consider any further development of the common good element of it.
Okay, members, content with that? Okay, are there any other questions that members would like to raise as regards the content of this paper at this time? Councillor Carnell?
No question, but just I haven't got 2.3, did we do 2.4 as well? We touched on 3.23, but did we actually clarify that?
Sorry?
I was hoping that it was a microphone because it's an obvious thing that you need to discount all the recommendations and rewrite them.
I believe that we have discarded those 4 recommendations in favour of a single request for the information to be brought back at a later date. I would ask when that later date might be, recognising of course that we don't have any further information about the best practice document that's due. But ideally I would aim for February, preferably, if that information is available. However, I would ask officers what the feasibility of that might be. Councillor Dempsey?
So I said just before the officers reply, it's really your discretion, but we could have 2 meetings, one to sort out the body, which we could do in the next couple of months. It will be what this is, December sometime, or late November. We could sort out the body depending how quickly officers can bring together an appropriate report. And as I said, there is no urgency and no pressure on officers, but we could do that one and then await the outcome of the guidance, because that will probably be certainly a longer and healthier debate, and I thought, if that's the right phraseology to use on how we deal with that. But it's an opportunity to deal with part of it and take forward, as George says, some of the work or business that's been delegated to us. But I'm in your hands, Chair, I'm happy with February as well. If it's the 14th, mind my cared.
Thank you, Councillor McLeod.
Yeah, while I hear what Councillor Dempsey is saying, I would possibly think that the good practice document is likely to include how councils actually deal with it, not just the criteria. So I wouldn't always make any decisions until we know what the contents of that good practice is, because it may well not just be the criteria they talk about. It could be the way in which councils are actually handling the community benefit money.
Happy with that suggestion, Chair. We'll hear from you when we have the appropriate information for all the elements of the guidance.
Thank you. Chris?
Thank you, Chair. Can I just say that the good practice is likely to just highlight the practices that communities have undertaken with use of community Windfarm benefits. It will not actually detail practice on how the funds should be dispersed. So I think in terms of the good practice guide, it needs to be taken into account in terms of what that practice and that guide will actually state, as opposed to saying that it may be about how the funds are then expended by whichever body elected members choose.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Carnell?
Thank you, I take on board what Chris is saying there, but I think, because there's an urgency in some point, as George is saying earlier, but I don't think there's no a lavish amount of money set in we will have to disperse or move into our communities. So I'm happy enough to wait off till February, till the next have a single aspect which Jim McClellan and Dempsey are saying.
Thank you. In light of the situation insofar as best practice is concerned, I would suggest that I'll be in discussions with the officers with regard to the next meeting, and will advise members and get it in the council diary at the earliest possible date once we know the publication date of the best practice, and when therefore report back to this committee will be enabled. Are members agreeable with that? Chris?
Thank you, Chair. Could I just finally say to us what exactly elected members are clearly asking us to come back with? That would be really helpful, so that we're absolutely sure that when we come back with the next report, we're bringing it back to the requirements of the committee. Thank you.
I think that's also what recording is proving beneficial. Thank you.
Certainly, Chairman. What you've actually agreed to is explore further options 1 and 2 in more detail, with the addition of further options 1A and 2A, which would include proposals to top slice the fund for area committees for the smaller projects. We also recognising that you need to await the best practice guidance before receiving these more detailed options, and to also receive more info on the role of the scoring panel.
Councillor Downster?
Chair, I think it as well, and I'm sure Chris has been scrubbing furiously anyway, but we did talk about rating factors. I think the report has to be particularly detailed. We should have options of all different kind of rating factors that we could apply, whether or no particular significance is given to some elements of that, whether it be tourism, social housing, whatever it might be, recognising rural and local elements as well. So all these things will be contained, I would hope, in a long lengthy list that you could probably sit and score out. I wouldn't want Chris to be constrained. She should have some sort of vision of other things that you might want to consider, and you can delete the ones that don't particularly appeal to us, and in that way we've got a far better feel for what we could do and what we eventually choose to do.
Thank you, Councillor McClellan.
There's also how the community members and options 1, particularly option 1, but also option 2 would be selected in the appointment.
And I think on the piggyback of that, Chair, also length of time they might serve, and how we would substitute if appropriate or whatever, because you don't want folk to be unable to attend, and as a consequence of that there's no community representation at any particular time. So those are things we should consider as well before we actually settle on what we eventually see as an appropriate arrangement.
Okay, thank you. As I say, all this is recorded. I can hear my ears going on with the headphones already, listening to the playbacks. Okay, members, I've got no other points I would like to raise. I thank you for your attendance. I've got no further business today. Thanks very much.